Welcome back to Jacques in the garden. The summer garden is here. Everything is really grown out quite a bit. Everything is filling out and I have plenty of produce to harvest, and I've been harvesting for months now. So I figured let me take you through the garden on a hot summer day. Today was around 88 degrees, maybe 90, and it's about 4 o'clock right now. So it's not going to be in the best light, best conditions of the garden. This is the real summer garden at the peak of it. We're gonna get started over here in the first garden that I built, which is the south garden, this whole section over here. And this bed has actually been doing quite well. So for starters, up front here, I have a pepper bed. And one thing that I noticed this year was I really tried to push not having mulch for a long time. And then about 2 months or so ago, I came through, added compost, fertilizer, and mulch to every single bed, and they are producing so well now. This is the side of my garden that actually gets a lot of shade throughout the day. So to see this much pepper production at this point, having only planted the peppers recently, I'm very pleased. I have peppered a couple flowers throughout, but this year my flower game is honestly a little bit weak. One thing that I have really appreciated this year though is growing squash vertically. This is the first year that I've ever done it with a summer squash. And actually I got one harvest right here. Just come at the base, twist it off. And it's really easy to find the fruits when their squash is growing vertically. There's also less damage to the fruit from getting like poked by the leaves or insects as it sits on the ground. So overall, I think I will be growing my summer squash this way moving forward because it's been working out really well. I'm gonna set that down, and I wanted to talk about this monstrosity over here because these are actually the oldest tomatoes in my garden. They've been in the ground now, I believe since March. So as you can see, they've clearly outpaced their height and they're now starting to cascade and fall down the trellis. But this net trellis has worked out really well for me. It is actually a trellis I would recommend to anyone who wants something that's a little bit easier to manage than a Florida weave. It still supports a lot of growth and you get tons of tomato production on it. This has been one of my favorite cherry tomatoes this year. It's called Gardener's Delight. They are very plump. They're much bigger than some of the other cherries that I've grown, which makes them very versatile for cooking or using in salads. There's like a more pulp to skin ratio, so it's really great for cooking down in a cherry tomato sauce. But very delicious as well, not just sweet, has a nice little balance of tartness and savory flavors. So I highly recommend the Gardener's Delight as a new cherry tomato. Now, working our way over, I decided to try to plant some okra in this side of my garden. Now, as I mentioned, there is a lot of shade, so the okra has been a little bit stunted, but so far it seems to have really responded to this late August heat. I'm getting a lot of new growth on it, lots of leaves, a lot of flowers forming, and actually, looks like an infestation of stink bugs down here. You could always tell when you see these, they look like tiny little ladybugs. Well, I killed them all. Tiny little ladybugs that have like white spots on them and they're all black. So if you ever see that, just go ahead and squish them all. They definitely smell a little bit weird, but you'd rather have that done than have a bunch of stink bugs all over your plants. So anyway, moving on from that little thing, this is my cucumber trellis, and this year I've grown cucumbers on it twice. So this is my second succession planting of them, and it's on the same similar setup. So I have 2x2s going into the ground, 2x2 going across, and then I have this net trellis sitting across it. One thing that's been really cool is that this sorrel has been producing, I think since like February, nonstop champion of greens production, really good in soups, but I'm not eating soups in the summer. So this has been getting a little bit less use this time of year, but the cucumbers are doing really great. This is my second succession planted on here, and I love having them on the trellis to not take up any space on the ground, but just grow vertically. The nice thing is that behind them, I'm not really blocking much from the sun because I have this huge flame seedless grape here, which this year has done better than it's ever done before. This is the first year where I don't have severe disease on the leaves. You can definitely see some spotting occurring on some of the older leaves, but nothing honestly that bad. There's no powdery mildew, which I'm absolutely shocked by. And this year is when I added in that potassium bicarbonate spray. I talked about it in a recent vlog that I just posted in August, but that's really kept the mildew down, and it's allowed me to harvest 4 perfect bunches of grapes. They were so delicious, crunchy, snappy, sweet, a little bit of tartness, no mildew, most importantly. So I was actually going to remove this grape, but now that I was able to grow it through the whole season and harvest grapes, I will be keeping it. I've decided it's earned its keep. One thing though is that I need to rebuild this trellis here because you can't tell because there's just so much grape on it, but this whole thing is actually broken in the soil. The only thing keeping it up right now is the sheer weight of the vines before this entire thing collapses. So probably do a trellis rebuild later in the spring season for next year. I'll show you guys that video. But let's come on down through because I have this wooden raised bed here that I added fairly recently, and it's been doing really well. What I have planted here is the green chard, and this is one that we now carry on Botanical Interest. It's called perpetual spinach. The great thing about it is that it doesn't taste very minerally, and it produces any time of year. I've had it growing literally year round, and it's our favorite green to throw into sautés, stir fries, into a sauce before you're finishing it, like a tomato sauce, add a little bit of green to it. Really wonderful. And the backside here, I had a bunch of beans growing that I've already harvested out. I need to actually plant something else there, haven't quite decided. And I've got a determinate grape tomato, a determinate early girl, and on the back wall here, it used to be a Cherokee purple and a sun gold, but now it's just turned into a gigantic blob of sun golds, which I can't say I'm sad about, but I do wish I still had that Cherokee purple. I have a towering basil in there that could probably make enough pesto to feed 50 people on that one plant alone. So definitely some pesto in the future here. But I want to show you guys one of my favorite flowers that I did have this year and one that I have every year, especially in the summer, and that is the Mexican sunflower, AKA Tithonia, or torch, I believe is the variety of this one. But just take a look at the size of this thing. It is absolutely profuse with blooms. It's been around alive now, flowering for, I'd say 2 months. So it looks pretty good considering it's been growing all through the hottest part of the year. And this will set flowers in any heat, any amount of water. It's extremely drought and heat tolerant. Butterflies go crazy for this. Later in the afternoon, you'll see a whole mixture of Gulf fritillaries, a whole bunch of monarch butterflies, everything in between. Hummingbirds also love them. So I've really appreciated having this flower, especially in the summertime. It could really handle quite a lot. One thing that you can't see in there are the 2 apple trees that I planted this year. This is my experiment where I have a pink lady and a Fuji apple planted here in San Diego. Even though those are apple varieties nobody would recommend for our region, I actually met Tom Spellman, and when he came down, he's a mastered orchardist, grower of fruit trees, works for Dave Wilson, and he mentioned an experiment that said that those 2 fruit trees grown in Los Angeles produced like crazy. So LA, San Diego, not that far apart, and they're my favorite apples. So fingers crossed, maybe next year we'll see if I get any. But one thing for sure that I'm getting this year is pomegranate. I planted this pomegranate at the same time as those 2 apple trees, but those 2 apple trees were planted as bare roots. This was planted as a mature 5-gallon pot. This is a Texas pink pomegranate. First year production, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fruit that have actually set on it. So I'm actually 7. So I'm very pleased about that. And I'm very much looking forward to eating the first pomegranates out of my garden. I have a smaller one over here that's just establishing, but this guy is actually one that we sell in our store. I'm very impressed with its growth so far. Now moving down the other half of this tomato jungle, which I think looks a little bit worse than the other side. But one thing that's interesting, this is my least favorite pest right here. Right there is a leaf-footed bug. They're called that because they have this little leaf-like thing on the back of their foot. And what they do, first of all, they smell weird. It smells kind of like vinegar. I can even smell it now. But what they do is they go up to every single tomato and stab it. And they'll stab it 100 times. They'll have all their babies. They'll all stab your tomatoes, your peppers, your eggplants. And then what will happen is they'll spread disease. They'll get weird spots all over your fruit. And it just ruins the quality of eating. So whenever I see them, I like to just grab them and give them a quick squish because I don't need any of that in my garden. So that's one of the few bugs I will kill on site without any hesitation. They are related to a stink bug, so it makes a lot of sense. Okay, back to the plants. Here I have a full bed of eggplant. This is a variety called Ania. It's one of the most pretty, oh yeah, here's a perfect one right here I could harvest. Definitely one of the most beautiful eggplant I've ever grown. This wonderful white and purple streaks on it. It's a very tender eggplant, sweet, it's not very bitter. Easily one of my favorite alongside the Asian elongated style eggplants. And this year it's looking really good. If you've had if you've had spider mites on your eggplant, this is actually something that I dealt with in this particular bed right now. As you can see, the new leaves are looking good. What I did this year is once I saw that, I started spraying the plants with water, just from the hose, as often as I could whenever I came out here, and that just eliminated them. The spider mites don't like dry soil. They thrive on dry soil, they thrive on dry plants. So by bumping the humidity, keeping everything wet, you're able to just beat them back without using any chemicals. And this eggplant here, it speaks to the results on its own. So that's pretty much, I think, all I want to show you on this side of the garden. I did just plant another tomato because I have a tomato pathology. I cannot stop planting them. I'm addicted. So let's go over to the greenhouse because I got a lot of cool stuff in there. I'm really excited to show you guys. Here we are, the greenhouse fan is off. It's gonna get very hot in here very soon. So let's try to get this as fast as we can. One thing I'll mention though, is I did just actually add in irrigation on a timer. So every single one of these pots has one of these little twisty irrigation sprayers. It's just a little sprinkler basically, micro irrigation. So working our way through, my goal with this greenhouse for the winter period or fall period is to try to push my season. And what that means, I know it's kind of funny because I'm San Diego 10B, what am I pushing? Well, I'm trying to push into producing peppers, cucumbers, and tomatoes as deep into winter as I possibly can. So what I've done is I've started planting a bunch of peppers in containers. First of all, they absolutely love it in here. Even though it's like just a regular part of the season, the growth that I'm getting in here is phenomenal. I'm very excited about that. I also have a dwarf tomato here, which looks absolutely incredible. So things are responding really well to the greenhouse as long as I have that fan running. Cucumber production has been one of the best for me. I'm actually training them on these strings up to climb my greenhouse. I just put another one in right here. Looks really good, I have to say. Now working down, I have the tropical section. One new thing is actually the sweet potato. And this sweet potato is growing like nobody's business. I have a vine from here stretching all the way to the start of the greenhouse. There's vines climbing all throughout every single corner here. So that's been really good. I'll probably get an amazing harvest. Turmeric, incredible growth. This is my turmeric plant. I've never had a turmeric get taller than this before. So I already know it's off to a good start. In the back there, the thinner leaves, all of that is ginger. So very, very good, very happy. My guava production is also off the charts right now. I'm very excited to eat these. But probably the thing I'm most excited for is the mango. I just harvested the first one yesterday. So I brought it inside to see if I could ripen it up and enjoy it. But it's still, I think, 3 or 5 days out. I cannot wait to eat that mango. I know it's going to be incredible. Now, one quick thing I'll mention before we get out of this heat here is that I only have a couple plants left in here. Most of my seedlings are outside, which I'll show you in a moment here. But for now, I have all of these rooted dragon fruit cuttings that I need to figure out where the heck I'm gonna put. I have a couple peppers and dwarf tomatoes that are gonna end up living in the greenhouse. So that's why I have them acclimating right now. But no seed starting in here anymore. Because as you can see down here, seed starting in the greenhouse in summer, not a good idea. Everything on this tray got roasted when I forgot about it for one day. So let's take a look at my new seedling setup right outside. So how do I start my seeds in the summertime? Well, this is what I'm doing now. I have this wonderful contraption, a couple pieces of wood that I've draped over with 40% shade cloth. Now this is doing two things for me. First of all, it's keeping some of the humidity in this area so that this doesn't dry out as fast. Second of all, it's blocking 40% of the sun. What that means is that these won't get that hot. They won't get that heat stress. The soil won't overheat, which a lot of the plants I'm starting right now don't want hot soil. For example, some broccolis will not germinate if it's too warm. So that was a bad example, but basically some plants need cooler soil temperature in order to germinate. Some plants need warmer soil to germinate. But in the summertime, throwing some shade cloth over, you're probably gonna hit every single plant's need. So this has been wonderful. It's actually allowed me to go the entire day today, even though it almost reached 90, without having to water these seedlings again from the other day. So very happy with this. But now let's go take a look at the bigger garden, AKA the North Garden. So this is the North Garden, but it is a weird perspective. I've never started you off back here. This is the Pride of Madeira, obviously not in bloom, but I'm wanting to draw your attention to this right here, which is that 3-in-1 peach tree. This was a bare root tree 6 months ago, guys. So I had 4 little roots hanging off the bottom. That's it, a couple sticks pointing up. And this is all the growth in just 6 months. So I'm gonna consider that method approved. It's real, it works. The visual evidence is right here before you. I even harvested 3 peaches off this tree. A bare root fruit tree, first year, harvested 3 peaches and they were absolutely incredibly delicious. So definitely try that method out if you want to invest a little bit of hard labor and sweat instead of time or money into getting a more established tree. Now moving downwards, we have my persimmon farm here, which is actually 2 persimmons planted in 15-gallon containers, mostly because I wasn't sure where to put them. But they are now fruiting, which I'm very excited for. I was not expecting it this early, but I am very much looking forward to eating these. Now on this side, I have the other oldest tomatoes. Now these are the ones that are Florida weave. So I have sauce and cherry tomatoes back there. Over here is my slicer row. And this is the row that I've been pulling just absolutely ridiculous amounts of tomatoes off. You can see right now, it is fully overgrown. It is actually a double height tomato right now because it reached the top and now it's almost reached the ground. So if I were to stretch out one of those vines, it'd be close to like 16, 18 feet from the soil level to the tip of that vine, which is pretty impressive. On this side here, I have a more recently planted row of tomatoes. So these have been in here for, I'd say, I don't know, 2 to 3 months instead of 6. And I also have a bunch of lettuce, alyssum, eggplant, zinnias, all sorts of companions down there. They're doing really wonderful and I'm really happy with it. Now coming down through the pollinator patch, which is mostly just remaining as a blanket flower patch, we have the most recently planted tomatoes. These have been in the ground for just about 2 months. So they've been in the ground for the hardest period of the year, which is that deep summer period. There is some signs of disease on them. As you can see, I am not hiding anything. There are dead leaves. One thing I figured out this year was removing every single dead leaf does make your garden look aesthetically a little better, but it doesn't really make any difference on the plant's health, your fruit production. In fact, it might even help shade your fruit from getting sun scald. So if you have a couple dead leaves like that, I wouldn't worry about it. The disease is already present. It's not like you could defeat it by removing that dead leaf. Now on my right here, I have my trellis where I've planted a bunch of cucumbers in a fairly recent video, and you can see just how much they've grown in that short period of time. It's already reaching above my waist level. It's actually producing a really nice cucumber there. So this is growing really well. Now over here on my left side is the pepper bed where I made that video titled How to Grow Peppers Faster for Free. And it's been doing extremely well. I'm getting insane amount of production out of here. The main thing I'm getting a lot of though are hot peppers, which I'm a little bit regretful for because I wanted to plant more sweet peppers than I did. Now, one thing for sure is that on this one Sugar Rush peach pepper, there's like 100 ripe fruits. On the Serrano over there, likewise, 100 ripe fruits. On my nice Escamillo delicious frying pepper, 6 fruits. So next year, I'll be growing way more sweet peppers. I tend to find that they produce less overall. They also tend to be bigger, which is another reason why they don't produce as frequently. But nevertheless, I've enjoyed every single pepper that's come out of here. It's been really delicious. Now, working our way down through this side, I still have this herb bed that's been established with the sage, winter savory, lemon thyme, oregano, French and English thyme. But I also have this whole area here which is like a no-dig style garden. I haven't ever really dug it. I've just been layering compost on it. And right now I have a bunch of squashes, which are now really starting to fill out. You can see the shades really creeping in on this bed though. So this half of this garden basically gets full shade after 5 o'clock, but before that, it gets plenty of morning sun. One thing that's been interesting is that this year I added in a broccolini and a purple burgundy broccoli here, and both of them are doing fine now. I was not expecting that. They looked pretty bad earlier, but now I've increased the watering and they're not only looking good, but they're producing actual florets. So I don't know. I don't know if it's the location, I don't know if it's the variety, but I am excited to see that I'll be getting broccoli a little bit, actually a lot earlier than I expected. So that's one of the things that just goes to show in the garden, there aren't really any rules. The only rule is that plants need sunlight, air, and water to grow. Other than that, experiment, try things out. Even if somebody tells you it doesn't work, there's a good chance like that broccoli, it might work and you might get a little bonus out of it. Now on this half, I have my 4-in-1 plum tree. This one I did not set up the hole in quite an extreme of a way as that peach I showed you. And also I should mention, I just summer pruned this tree a week ago. That's why it's not as big. But I just wanted to highlight one of the things I'm trying to do here, which is keeping these trees at a shorter height so it's easier for me to harvest. By forcing these branches lower, next year's fruit's going to be within my reach, which I'm very much appreciative for. One other thing that I did here is I'm trying out these fruit tree trainers. I guess it's not really working because it just fell off. But the idea behind it is it's supposed to push the branches in the direction I want so that the tree has the shape that I overall want to get out of it. So more on that later in another video. But I also have the 2 pears back here, which are really starting to, I mean, not really, they have finished really growing out and they're now quite tall. I'll need to prune those pretty soon. But one of the things I'm most excited for is this bed over here where I have watermelon. I normally don't grow watermelon because the plant takes up so much space in the garden. I don't really have a lot of space to dedicate to it. But I said, you know what, let's just try it out. And I am very happy to say I've got 2 big melons on the way and I cannot wait to enjoy them. Now behind that is the bed that I had also a bunch of tomatoes in. This is the first bed where I actually removed tomatoes from my garden. Totally overgrown, falling in on itself. And I ripped it all out, And I saved these 2 basils, which look really, really good right now. But this is the weirdest companion planted bed I've ever grown. It is okra, which is nice and tall up front, so it shouldn't shade or get in the way of anything else. Peppers in the back, a row of lettuce hidden behind the peppers, which were supposed to shade it, but it's just too hot. Lettuce honestly looks a little bit sad. And in the middle here, I have some melons and squash. So the idea is that they will ramble underneath the okra. Okra will grow nice and tall, fall onto the ground, and spread throughout this empty half of my garden where they won't get in the way of anything else. So far it's working. Everything's growing really nicely. I'm very excited for that. On the teepee trellis itself, I have a mixture of cucumbers, climbing beans, and summer squash. This is a summer squash that's called center cut. It's technically a butternut that you eat as a summer squash, but this has been a little hit or miss. I have gathered a lot of beans from it. I am letting all these beans go dry. That's why you see a lot of these what look like dead bean pods, because they're actually just full of dry beans. And the idea behind that is that I will get some beans for soup season once it actually cools down in the fall and winter. These are the gigante beans, which I absolutely love in soups because they get like this big. It's really fun to eat. Now, working through this bed behind me, we're not going to talk about. It's kind of, it's an experiment gone wrong. We planted some nettle on purpose. We didn't use the nettle. It's now overgrown and loaded this whole area up with spikes. So at some point in this next week, I need to tear this all down, probably compost it, and plant it with some real crops. But next to that is a real bed, which is full of 4 shishitos, mini bell peppers, more melons. I'm honestly pushing my melon luck here. It's pretty late in the season to try to go melons, but we'll see. I saw them, I decided to plant them. The eggplant has been crushing it back here. It seems to like having a little bit of shade in the afternoon because this wall will cast a shadow over it in the evening. And I don't know what it is about it, but yesterday, this is like 3 plants. I want to say I harvested somewhere in 20 to 30 range of eggplant. So I was very impressed. They were also very delicious. Now in the bed that I had my wheat growing in, this is the hugelkultur in-ground bed. I was like, what can I grow after wheat? Oh, how about another grass? And I put corn in there. I don't know why. I put 2 grasses back to back. They're both technically grass. They have the same nutritional needs and desires, but it's working. The corn is super tall, like really, really quite spectacularly tall. It is producing 2 to 3 ears per plant, which I'm very excited for, and it looks great. So in about a week or 2, I should be pulling tons of fresh corn out of this. One last thing I want to mention, this is the only unplanted section of my entire garden, and today I will be planting it with green beans. So I will be getting beans soon for the fall. And behind that, it's kind of hard to see back here because it's so crazy with the tomatillo action, but this is that cedar bed that I burnt using that Japanese technique, sealed it with tung oil, and it's still looking really good. The tomatillos are loving it. They're taking over this whole area, but that's kind of the garden right now, guys. I'm very pleased with it. It is a late summer garden, so you'll see that there's a lot of dead stuff, a lot of things that look a little bit sad, but overall, everything is thriving. I'm getting tons of produce out of the garden. I'm already getting broccoli ahead of fall, so I'm very excited. This has been a wonderful gardening year for me. Been hot, but not crazy hot. Insects have been lower, disease pressure a little bit lower. I'd love to hear what you guys experience across wherever you're watching from. Tell me how your garden is, especially right now in the summer. I know it could be rough, but thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.